Hi, my name is Allison Cram, and I want to welcome you to the Southern Oregon coast in Bandon, Oregon, where I live. And we live on a cranberry farm, and I wanted to just share a little bit about it with you. I've had several people asking me, how do cranberries grow and what do they look like? Do they grow on trees? Do they grow on bushes? And so today I wanted to show you a little bit about our farm, as well as tell you a little bit about how cranberries grow. Now this farm, my grandfather started clearing the land here by hand in the 1930s. He planted first of all about 6 acres of cranberries, and that was the starts of this farm. Now we have a little over 25 or 26 acres of cranberries that we harvest every year, and the farm has grown, of course, but when my grandfather cleared the land himself, he did it all by hand, and so I can't imagine what it was like. But that's a story for another day. For today, I just want to show you around the farm. My family moved here back in when I was 7 years old. We moved to the farm and took over for my grandfather, and so my parents have lived here then ever since then. And so I moved back to the farm in 2009. I had been in education for almost 20 years. I had been a teacher and a school counselor and a principal, and I decided it was time to come back home and help on the farm and to prepare to take over for the next generation so that we can keep the farm going and learn exactly how it is that we do grow cranberries. As a child, I worked in the farm. We had to work 4 hours a day every day during the summertime before we could ride our motorcycles or go swimming in the ponds, these ponds you see behind me, or go to the beach or do anything fun like that. We had to work 4 hours a day in the cranberry fields, and so at that time it was what motivated me to go to college and have a real job, so to speak. Now I realize that there's nothing better than working for yourself and having the freedom to grow your business the way you want to, and to not have to go to a job every Monday morning. So anyway, but I wanted to show you around the farm, and I wanted to just share my little slice of heaven with you. I love living on the farm. I love this area. I enjoy the cranberries. They're a very nutritional berry, and so I just wanted to share it with you. So just a couple little fun facts about cranberries before we head out on our tour. Number one, cranberries is one of only 3 berries that are actually native to North America. There's the cranberry, the blueberry, and the huckleberries. And interestingly enough, we have all of those right here in this area. Also, what many people don't know is cranberries are grown here on the Oregon coast. We have about 1/6 of the cranberry market in North America. And then cranberries are also grown in Wisconsin, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and then in Canada. There's 2 provinces in Canada, in British Columbia and Quebec, where cranberries are grown here in North America. And there are more than 100 varieties of cranberries. You look at the berries in the store and you just see little round red berries, and there are all different kinds of berries. There's white berries, there's several different, like I said, over 100 varieties of cranberries, and they all have different little nuances to them, different amounts of sweetness, different sizes, different colors, and they grow a little bit differently. So anyway, I just wanted to share those few little fun facts about cranberries with you that perhaps you didn't know before. And so with that being said, let's go on a tour of our farm. All right, so here I am next to one of our cranberry fields. It's just close to where I was just giving you the introduction and where we were talking. And you can see that there are some other fields out there. You see that there's a little road that separates this field from the next one. And that little road that goes between the different fields is called a dike. And we use those, one, to get around the fields, and so we can drive all the way around. The second reason we use those is because when we harvest the berries in the fall, we do what we call a water harvest, which means we flood the bogs, and we want to flood them so that the water is about 3 to 4 inches above the top of the vines. And so we need to have a way to keep the water encased. And you will also notice that the bogs up above there, the fields that we're looking at past that road, look like they're a little bit higher elevation. There's actually 3 fields north of that we're looking in the northerly direction. There's 3 fields north on our farm here from where we are, and each of them is a little bit higher in elevation than the next one. and I'll explain to you a little bit later why we do that. But so this vine, this bog right now has been planted, for I think about 10 years, and it's one of our better producing fields. We get about between 400 and 450 barrels to the acre, or remember, a barrel is about 100 pounds. So the crop is already set for this year to a certain extent. In the fall, the buds are set on the vine before we ever harvest. And so over the winter they go dormant, the vines do, and they go to sleep. And when we start having warm weather here in the spring, then they start to wake up a little bit, and they start to, the buds that were set last fall, they start to swell, and that's when the berries start waking up, and that's when we start fertilizing and irrigating and taking care of them. So I'm going to go out here in the field and show you what one of the new buds looks like. But you can see here, let me zoom this back out. You can see here, you see sprinklers, and you can see the different colors of the vines out here, and you see more fields over there. So let's go down into the field and I'll show you what the vines look closer up. All right, we're down here at field level, vine level. You can see the vines here, and this is what they look like. Get in here a little bit closer, see what those look like. So the vines continue to grow up. They will grow about 1 inch to 1.5 inches each year, and the berries will actually end up being attached about where you see the vines, the top of the vines right now. And then they'll continue to grow about 1 inch and 1.5 inches above where they're at, and that's where next year's crop will be set on. Okay, I'm going to show you now what one of the buds looks like. See if we can get this zoomed in for you. There we go. You see over there on the shoot that comes out to the left, and on the one to the right, at the very top where the leaves kind of cup, that's where the bud is. And over the winter, that bud was set before we did harvest this last year. And over the winter, while these vines were dormant, those buds were just asleep. And then when the warm weather comes, they start to wake up, and then as they continue to wake up, those buds begin to continue to swell. And that's the first stage of the cranberries starting to grow each spring. You see this one right here. You get out of the sunlight there. You see the little hooks that start to come out on that. And that's what will happen next. This upright seems to be a little bit ahead. And the hooks kind of come out and eventually they shape up to be kind of like a little crane. And those will then, these little red pieces here that you see coming out, those will blossom, and then that's when we bring the bees in and we pollinate. We use about 1 hive of bees for every acre to 1.5 acres, and so we rent bee hives from a company up in a bee farm up in Woodland, Washington is where we rent ours from. As the bud swells into what we call the hook stage, which is what those are that I just showed you, then they go ahead and they grow into the blossom stage. And that hook stage is where the cranberry actually gets its name. It was called because it looks like a crane, and so they call it the cranberry, and there is how we got the name the cranberry. And so once then the blossom has been pollinated, then the berries will start to set on. And when they first set on, they're very small. Each upright, which you could see those 5 or 6 different blossoms starting to come out there on that one that I showed you, and each of those will produce a cranberry. And so with any particular upright, you might get 6 or 7 or 8 cranberries on each one. So this time of year is the springtime, and we are the main things that we do now on a cranberry farm during this time of year is we are feeding the vines so that they will grow. And what we try to feed them is we feed them about 45 to 50 pounds per year of nitrogen. We spread that throughout their growing season. And then we also give them anywhere from 35 to 40 pounds, 30 to 35 pounds per year of phosphorus and potassium. And again, we spread that throughout their growing year based on what they're needing at the time. But you can see right now the vines are looking a little bit green. They have kind of a darkish color to them, but they are starting to turn green, and that's the new growth starting. And then with the other things that we're doing this time of year is we are keeping the weed management process going. And how we do that on our farm is we're blessed we don't have a huge number of weeds in our bogs, and so we're able to do what we call backpack spraying. And so we take a backpack with 2.5 to 3 gallons in it of a herbicide, and we go out and we find the weeds that are in the field, and we spray just those weeds. We don't blanket the whole farm or the whole field with the spray. We just blanket just those particular weeds. And for those of you that are concerned about things like that, we try to be as natural as possible. And also, we do not spray anything on our fields within 90 days of harvest time. So everything has had a chance to dissipate, to be washed off, and we have a very stringent monitoring system when we take our plants, our berries into the plant to be processed. They're all checked very carefully for any amounts of any kind of herbicide or any kind of chemical at all that would be present on them. And if there's anything found, then that whole field is not taken. So we have to be very careful about that. So anyway, so this time of year, the other thing we're doing is we're mowing the dikes. We keep the grass down, keep the weeds down, try to keep any weeds off of the dikes that might go to seed and pollinate out into the bog. So we keep those mowed down. We are irrigating about every other morning. We have a system here where every Sunday morning, Tuesday morning, Thursday morning, and Friday evening we irrigate for about 45 minutes. We don't want the fields to be swampy. Many people think that they're going to be swampy. We don't want to do that. We want them to be damp and the soil to be damp, but we don't want it to be too wet because the vines and the roots will actually begin to rot, and so it's not healthy for the field. And so we're keeping track of that. And so the mowing, the fertilizing, keeping the weeds down, irrigating, that's pretty much what we do throughout the spring and summer and into fall. And then in the fall we harvest. So there you go. There's some information about what a cranberry field looks like and how we grow them. All right, this is the other side of that field where we were, and I wanted to show you something here. I hope it's evident on the camera what I'm trying to tell you. But you can see this bog over here on the right is about 5 feet lower than this bog over here on the left. And the reason for that, we do that with all of our fields. So when we harvest, we start with the bog that's at the highest level, and we flood it. And we knock the berries off, and we gather all the berries up, and we take them to the processing plant. And then once we're done harvesting that field, then we release the water into the next field. So we are using that water over and over and over again. Sometimes we have to pump a little bit more in because some of course gets absorbed into the dikes or into the soil. but you can see how this bog is much lower than this bog. And so we, the size of our fields allows us to harvest about a field a day. So it takes us about 12 days to harvest all of our fields. And we do that in the fall. And so we take the sprinkler heads off. You can see these sprinklers over here. And we unscrew all of those out of there, and then we just turn the pumps on and they start to flood the field. Now this field here, you see how there's a difference in the vines right there, these right closest to us, and then there's a line out there just past that second sprinkler. We mowed this field earlier this year to plant a new field, and I'll take you to that field and I will show you that field here in a little bit. But that's how we replant a field. You can buy vines, but if you have a field that has really good production and it's doing well and the vines are healthy, you can just mow that after the harvest. So shortly before you want to plant them, which the planting time around here in our area, the best time to plant is February, mid-February to late March. And so we mowed this about 2 months ago, part of this field, and within not this year but the following year of 2019, when we harvest, this will have its berries back on it and it will grow right back. And so we have to keep it well watered, and we cut back on the fertilization because obviously there's not as much plant there to receive the nutrients, and so you don't want to over fertilize. But so we treat this half of the bog a little bit different than the other half. But this is why this looks the way it does. We mowed it off so we could plant the other field. And when you plant, you want to have about 2,700 to 3,000 pounds of vines that you're spreading on the bog for every acre that you're planting. So just wanted to share a little bit with you about how we harvest and the way to reuse the water and utilize it as efficiently and effectively as possible. So I wanted to talk to you and explain just a little bit to you about how important our irrigation system is. You see the sprinkler there on the right, and then on the left you see that it's actually a half piece of PVC pipe, and it's there basically just to shield the sensor. That line runs up here to this little, what we call a birdhouse, but it's where we turn our pumps on and off for this field and the one right below it. And what that sensor does is it's a thermostat. There are 2 times of the year that you have to be very careful. One is this time of the year. If the temperature drops below about 32 degrees or 31 degrees, you stand the risk of your vines freezing and killing the buds, because they're just starting to wake up, and so a freeze would kill them and would ruin your crop. The other time of the year that we're very tuned in to what's happening with the weather, and our sprinkler system comes into play, and the thermostat system is, as we get later in the summer, if it gets too hot, then it can burn the vines and it can burn the berries and it can do damage to them. So if it gets above about 90 degrees, we have the sprinklers come on, and how ours work is they're on a system that they're on for 3 minutes, they cycle on for 3 minutes, and then they cycle off for 2 minutes. And so they don't have to run all night long throughout the night. They only have to run part of the time just to keep the temperature up. The water helps raise the temperature. So that's our sprinkler system is also used for fertilizing. We also use the irrigation system for flooding the bogs. We use it for keeping the bogs enough water and to keep the moisture at the right consistency. And you don't want to overwater them, but you definitely want to keep them moist. They need water to grow in. And this time of year we start having to irrigate a couple times, maybe every other day. We irrigate for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes in each field, so that it keeps the appropriate level of moisture in the field. So that's how important our water system is. That's why we're blessed on our farm, because we have 2 or 3 freshwater resources that come into the field into the farm, and that we're able to catch the water in our sumps and to utilize it, and we're very thankful for that resource. All right, so this is where those vines that we cut off of that other bog, where they got planted. This bog had been planted the last time in about 1985. So once you plant a bog, it does last a long time. The process to plant a bog is you have to clear the land and shape the bog and make the dikes and stuff. And then what you want, you really want a nice peat soil. It provides nutrients. It also provides acidity for cranberries to grow. You want between about a 4.2 to a 5.3 acidity, and so the peat soil helps to give that, and then also the sand, which we are blessed to have a lot of sand on this farm also. And so once you've cleared the soil, you've cleared the land of all the stumps and trees and debris and rocks and gravel and all that kind of stuff, then you want a nice layer of peat soil. And then on top of that, you put a compressed layer of about 6 to 8 inches of sand. And it looks like it's pretty well all flat. In truth, it does have a dome through the center of it so that the water will shed off evenly, and so you don't want water pooling in your field. And so once that's all done and you have the sand in there and you have the proper grade for your runoff, then what you do is you put in the irrigation, and you figure it out, and most of these are about 20, I think they're 28 feet by 28 feet apart, each of the sprinklers, so that you get a little bit of an overlap of your irrigation, but not too much. And so you lay out the irrigation and you put that in, and then you take those vines that were cut off from down at that other field and we spread them out, and we just do it by hand. We have we hire a group of people to come in and they help us, they spread it out. And then we have a tractor that has a bar on it that has discs on it, and once the vines are all laid out, that tractor runs over it, and those discs, they push the vines down into the soil. You can kind of see when you line this up just right, you can kind of see the rows of how the discs lined up, and you can see the evidence of them going down and pushing the vines in. And once those vines are pushed in, you go one direction and then they turn and they go another direction and they turn a third time, and they go diagonally across that as well to make sure that all the vines are pushed down in. Otherwise your wind will come along and blow them away, or they just won't take root. And so once you've done that and all the vines are pushed in, it took us about 2 days to plant this field. It's about 2.5 acres, and took us about 2 days to plant this field. And once those vines are all pushed in there, then you give it a good watering so that the soil is damp, and then you try to keep it fairly damp. And after about 3 weeks, you'll start to see little white roots coming out of those vines that are put in there. And the vines that we mow, we cut them to a length of about, I don't know, they're probably about 8 to 9 inches long. And so as they go down in, then you have hopefully 2 kind of uprights coming up off of them. Now we will not harvest this bog this year. This is 2018 when I'm making this video. The first year that we will harvest it will be the fall of 2019. And when we harvest it that year, next year, or about 1.5 years from now, we'll get maybe 1/4 to possibly 1/3 of the production off of it that we will eventually get off of it. It takes about 4 to 5 years to get up to full production. And so it takes time. It's an investment of your time, it's an investment of your finances, it's an investment of your energy and your love and care over the vines. But eventually this field will be full like the other one. It'll all grow in and it'll be full. For now we have to make sure that we don't let weeds get started in it, so that if you can keep the weeds out when the vines are not so thick like now, then you have a much better chance later on of keeping your weeds out as well. And so let me get you down here on the bog level and you can kind of see. So that's what a brand new planting looks like. It's about 6 weeks yeah, about 6 weeks old. So, and this is some more of the property here on the farm. So anyway, there is a new planting. If you have questions, if you have comments you would like to leave below, please do so. I would love to hear those. If you would like to give me a thumbs up and subscribe, that would be awesome. And share this with anybody else that you think might be interested to know how do their Thanksgiving cranberries get grown. And when we get closer to harvest, I will definitely show you some more and give you some footage of the harvest and what that all is like. Thanks so much. I enjoyed spending this time with you, and I hope you have a great day.